Well, if Ned Hanlon owned Baltimore in the 1890s, the Earl of Baltimore was certainly the man to see from the 1960s into the 1980s. He is one of the most successful of all modern managers, a man who never stopped thinking of ways to beat you, but who always knew that a 3-run homer was not a bad strategy if you could use it. Earl Weaver's plaque reads as follows: Earl Sidney Weaver, Baltimore American League 1968 to 1982, 1985 to 1986. Managed Orioles with intensity, flair, and Arabic wit for 17 seasons. 5.83 winning percentage, 1,480 to 1,060. Ranks 5th all-time among 20th century managers with 10 or more years service. 94.3 wins per season, ranks 1st. 5 100-win seasons, 2nd on all-time list. Won 6 American League East titles, 4 pennants, and the 1970 World Series. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Earl Weaver.
Please don't make me cry now. I don't want to cry. I'm going to cry. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's hot out there, people. We want to get back and get a beer or something. I want to say to Joe Durso before I start, or whoever wants to listen, that all of those computer things that came back from Davy Johnson, all his lineups had him hitting 4th. And with Frank, Brooks, and Boog on that team, I didn't think they were right, so I started my own. Thank you, Ed. Hall of Famers, my wonderful family, and ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to try to do this without too much emotion, but today as I stand at this podium in baseball's hallowed city, I'm going to try and convey my thoughts and feelings to all of you, the baseball fans of America. Thankful that I was fortunate enough to manage 4 players already enshrined in the Hall: Frank and Brooks Robinson, Reggie Jackson, and of course the gentleman I had more arguments with than my wife, Mariana, Jim Palmer. I mention these 4 players by name because they are in the Hall of Fame, but I owe thanks, and all the fans out there know it, to every Baltimore player who ever put on a uniform. I was also fortunate enough to break in 2 rookies who I feel are going to be sitting up here someday: Cal Ripken Jr. and Eddie Murray. Another reason for my being here today is the fact that I was blessed with outstanding coaches: Frank Robinson again, Billy Hunter, Jim Fry, George Staller, Cal Ripken Sr., Elrod Hendricks, George Bamberger, and if there was a Hall of Fame for pitching coaches, George Bamberger would be in it, and Ray Miller. Most all of them went on to be successful managers themselves. I'm proud that I was associated with these types of gentlemen, and I was lucky to have used their expertise. I'm also proud of the fact that some of my players who played for me have gone on to be successful managers. Dave Johnson, Don Baylor, last year's National League Manager of the Year, Lou Piniella, Johnny Oates, and believe me, I hope I haven't missed anybody. Now, just shortly, how does it happen that a person who tried for 10 years to reach the major leagues as a player and another 10 years as a minor league manager, a manager who was just happy to be in baseball, ever reached the major leagues? Took a lot of guts by certain people, the people who were not afraid to give an unknown a chance. Harry Dalton, who was then general manager, had to convince Frank Cashin, the president of operations, who in turn had to convince the owner, Jerry Hoffberger, that I was ready to do the job. Must have taken a lot of courage for them to turn a major league club over to me. And if they knew how nervous I was, they might have had second thoughts. But as I stand here today and say thanks to them for the opportunity, I feel I justified their confidence in me. And now it's time to recognize a group of baseball people that very seldom receive credit for a job well done. This group being the umpires of the American and National League. I'm serious when I say their integrity and honesty is and must be beyond reproach. They accept the players and managers are, and they never let it affect their next call. Now, counting balls and strikes and close plays on the bases, they must have made over 1 million calls while I was managing, and except for those 92 times I disagreed, they got the other ones right. So to them, I want to say thanks for your patience, understanding, and keep up the good work, because the game can't be played without umpires. Going to get shorter, and speaking of the game today, I've been asked by many fans and people from the media how it's changed. Well, it hasn't changed. It's still 3 strikes, you're out, 4 balls, you walk, 3 outs to an inning, and the team that gets the most runs win. Now, maybe there are more specialists on each team now, with middle relievers, setup men, and closers. The games might be a little longer because of this, but it creates more excitement, more chance for second guessing, and certainly makes it a little tougher on the hitters up at home plate. I think today's fans like it because I read attendance records are being set every year. And another question, are today's players better or not as good as those players we older fans knew and remembered? There are many comparisons that can be made, but we'll have to go back a long way and then separate them by decades or generations. And I'm going to name just a few in each time period. Baseball had Babe Ruth, Tris Speaker, Ty Cobb. A few years later, Joe DiMaggio, Ted Williams, Stan the Man. Overlapping but carrying on in another decade, Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, and Duke Snider. And that's not to mention Frank Robinson again and Hank Aaron. You know, today they still have a way to go, but there's some good ones. You've got Barry Bonds, Ken Griffey Jr., Albert Bell, Mo Vaughn, Frank Thomas, and I've only mentioned a few, and most of them all were outfielders. So I want to get off of my speech here for just a minute, but just in another category. You could do it at almost any position. Walter Johnson, Bob Feller, then Sandy Koufax, Nolan Ryan, and I don't want to forget Jim Palmer. He'll write another bad book about me. There you go, Jimmy. My point here is, how can anybody say what era or time period produced the best players? They were all great players, and they got the best from their abilities. And 20 to 30 years from now, I hope someone will be saying the same thing about today's players. And if I could assemble all the major league players today and offer them some words of advice or at least a few suggestions, now I'm talking to the players, I'd say the following. First, appreciate the God-given talent that you've been blessed with. Everyone knows how hard you work to become a major leaguer. But if it only took hard work, there's thousands of people just like myself who would have or would be playing Major League Baseball today. You major leaguers, and I'm talking to them, have been given something special. And secondly, please recognize the fact that since you are special, there are baseball fans who look up to you, root for you, and believe it or not, even pray for you. I ask you to give them your respect and to appreciate their support. Some athletes of today have said they don't want to be role models, and I can understand their feelings sometime. So to them I would say, don't worry about being a role model, but be a solid, upstanding citizen. Be a role model parent to your children, and don't do anything that might bring embarrassment to your parents, your children, or other members of your family. And if you can accomplish those simple things, you'll have done everything that any baseball fan would expect of you. Now I'd like to say, and it looks like, now I'd like to say that the 35 some odd years I spent in baseball flew by so fast that I didn't even know I was getting older. The time was so enjoyable, especially when you're lucky enough to be making a living doing something you love. There were some hard times, but believe me, the good far outweighed the bad. And in closing, let me tell you, I'm proud of my record. I'm proud of the fact that I was even considered to be in the Hall of Fame, let alone voted in. I'm proud of the fact that I spent my whole major league career in one city. And for that, I would like to thank the wonderful fans of Baltimore for letting me stay.